and welcome to episode 4 for magazine number 5 of the Battle Games in Middle-earth magazine, and what a treat I have for you this week. I'm filming this just as I'm exporting the video for episode number 3 because my plan is quite a big plan, as it happens, quite ambitious. The magazine this week talks about creating a gaming table. So I'm going to do this in 2 parts, as I have been doing. I'm going to show you what I've made in the past. I've got a 6x4 table, permanent table, which I can use to set games up on. And I also, a couple of years back, made a 3x3 board which can be moved around and used. So I'll show you those. But then the build this week is something special. Quite a lot of you I know will have bought the War in Rohan book, which was a source book brought out for Middle-earth SBG a little while ago. And in this there is a load of scenarios. I'm not going to be able to count them off the top of my head, but 2 of these scenarios are of particular interest, and specifically because of the terrain that they're on. The first battle of the Fords of the Isen and the second battle of the Fords of Isen. Now these battles, these scenarios, call for you to play on a 4-foot by 4-foot board with the river running through the middle of it, or slightly to the west as it happens, and then some kind of like hilly rocky terrain leading on either side, and potentially you would have expected there to be some kind of a road, or at least a track going down towards the fords. And I am planning on building that over the next couple of weeks until I have to publish this again to keep to my schedule. So I hope you'll enjoy this. I hope you'll build along with me and do something, maybe stretch yourself, do something just as ambitious as this, or even more so. But whatever you're doing, try and build some terrain and let me know about it in the comments below. But I'll stop nattering on now and get on with the rest of the video, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks at the end to see how far I've got. Thanks for watching. Welcome to my games room, and welcome to my 6x4 table. So this is made based on some old cupboards, as you can see, that I use for storing things. There's 4 of these, 1 on each corner. On top there's a board, and then on top of that there's another board. Now I've rolled some of this fake grass stuff over because what I was playing before, but I also actually have the board painted green. I've done this board, this actual playing area is 6 foot by 4 foot wide, and down the sides you can see that I've marked out the 1 foot gradations. This makes it a lot easier to play Middle-earth SBG because if you want a 4x4 you can do that. If you want a 3x3 you can do that, because I've also marked along each of the sides as well with the foot gradations. At this end I've got a little shelf which you can put drinks on, or you can put your dice tray, which is what this is, or rolling trays, or your miniatures or whatever, just to make it a little bit more useful so you're not having to like juggle around when you're playing a big game. You've got some space for your miniatures. Now this is a very basic bit of kit. I'm not a great woodworker and it didn't take me all that long. I reclaimed these cupboards from another old school. I actually live in an old school, more on that another time I'm sure, from another old school that we were clearing, and I repurposed them. They're perfect height, as you can see, for playing. It's very comfortable to play around. We've done a lot of games on this, and these is just not MDF, plywood bought from a hardware store near us and just glued on top very simply, and then painted loads of times and then varnished. Didn't take me very long, really effective. Now I am lucky to have a lot of space, and a dedicated 6x4 table is not something all of you will be able to have. So yeah, however I do have the space, so I went for it. What I'll do now is I'll show you my smaller gaming table, which is set up just over here and has the 3x3 that I made before I had this room done, when we were just working away and playing on the kitchen table or in the lounge, and this is probably more achievable for someone who doesn't have huge rooms and the space and ability to fill them just with toys. So I'll move the camera around and I'll show you this other table. So here we have the 3x3 board which I made and have flocked for basically a sparse grassy plain. I'm quite pleased with this. I love it. It's great fun to play on. It's very, very simple. It's very flat. There's the very slightest raise here and the very slightest raise here of a couple of millimeters, but you can set your miniatures anywhere you wish, and it works very well. It also works at any scale, because I've not really gone for very much that gives a sense of scale. There's just different colors to different areas, which you could potentially say have different movement penalties or different things can hide in here. So if you were playing 6mm or even smaller, this would still work very, very well, because there is nothing that gives it scale. This is made using a frame made out of wood, a very thin wood, skirting board is what we call it in the UK, that goes around the bottom of walls around a room, just to get like a kickboard type thing. So that's actually what this wood is. And then in the middle is expanded foam, and then over the top is the techniques you've seen me use over and over again. You can see the paint, you can recognise the colour of that paint, and then sand, and then flock, and then some static grasses here. And this is actually a green, sort of like a sheet of grass that I've stuck on here and here, and it works very well. It's sitting on top of a 4x4 folding table, which was a great purchase, and I will put a link to that in the description below, because it took me a long time in the UK particularly to find a good folding 4x4 table. And if you take nothing else from this, these are really good. They're strong, they're stable, and they fold down very, very easily, so then they don't take up much space. So I can't recommend this highly enough. If you're in the United States, then you're very lucky, because you have 4x4 tables coming out of your ears over there. But in the UK, it's not quite like that. So there we are. That's a quick view of the two of the boards that I have. I've got the 6x4 permanent table, and then I've got this, which I can move around and play in different rooms, particularly in the winter when it's not quite so warm. And yeah, that works very well for me. What I'm now going to do is go back, have a look at the magazine, talk through what they say about tables and about boards and what have you. And then the thing I'm really looking forward to is I'm going to get stuck into my own build. So thanks for following along. And so to the magazine and the modelling workshop, making a gaming area. In this PAX modelling workshop, we take you through the basics of making a gaming area for your battle games. Whilst a fully modelled terrain board is something we all aspire to, a basic battle board is the most important terrain you will ever build. Not wrong that. So they talk you through how you can use the sheets, like I've got currently on my big table, and put some books underneath it to make some hills, which is a great idea. I mean, we all started there. They talk you through how to make something equivalent to my big table but more portable. So a 4x4 of 9mm MDF. Paint it with green emulsion paint. Bob's your uncle. Very, very simple. Really nice idea. And that, in the same way as my 3x3, can just be tucked away behind the sofa and kept out of the way. And then when you bring it out, you've got something which you can put some of your hills on, and some of your ruins on, and some of your hedges on, and then suddenly you've got a board and you can really immerse yourself in it. And immersion is really important, certainly for me in wargaming and in playing games. It brings to the fun. Next, it describes how you can use some of that sheet. This is the sheets that you can get which has like a grass flock effect on it, like I've cut out and put on my 3x3. Staple it down over the board, and you don't have to use any paint then, and that also can be quite nice. Now I do know that Wish have some options for this, and you might find better options now than when this magazine came out. It's another good idea. It is another good idea, and it does mean that you can store it quite easily. Of course, what we all want, as they say, is something like this, and I must admit, looking at that, it makes me want to make the Village of Brie. Maybe I will one day, but certainly not now. I'm going to do the Ford of Isen, and I'm really excited about that. So it's a very basic modelling workshop this week in one sense, but it's inspiring. It gives me the idea to go ahead and do this big build, and that's what these magazines are all about. They're brilliant. So let's get started on this amazing build. Here I am in my workshop, and I am about to put together the frame for this build. So earlier on today I went and bought some treated lumber, which is quite hard to get over here actually, and I bought enough, just enough, because I made a few mistakes while I was cutting it, but I didn't bring you along for that because it was very noisy with the mitre saw. And what I've ended up with is a 4 by 4 foot frame. So I've actually not got the bottom on at the moment, it's on the floor because I only have 2 of these useful clamps can you believe I am short of clamps? So my plan now is to glue and screw this. So because I've only got 2 clamps, what I'm going to have to do is glue and screw the top, and then later on, it doesn't take long, I'll glue and screw the bottom. I might even be able to do it straight away because the screws will hold the glue. Anyway, I'm now rambling. So what I'll do is I will point the camera and show you how I go about gluing and screwing a frame of this type. So I'll do one of these and then I'll do the rest not on camera because otherwise it will take me ages. But simply I have a battery powered electric driver, which is one of the best tools you'll ever buy. If you don't have any tools, get yourself one of these. It is brilliant. And what I'll do is I will put 2 holes, to drill 2 holes, which is where I'm going to put my screws. That's one. And then the other about there. 2 screw holes drilled. What I will now do is change this drill bit for a screwdriver bit. So I'll be back in a second. I have now gathered the other tools together that I needed. So now that I've screwed that, drilled that, what I can do is gently loosen this clamp. Okay, and take that off. Lean that up against the wall. Like so. And what I'll do is on the top of this, I'm going to put some glue. So it's just standard PVA. It's actually the same PVA as I use for my hobbying because, well, I use PVA from builders merchants anyway. I don't use hobby PVA. So we'll put some PVA on the top. PVA actually being wood glue, that is what it's made for. And screwing and gluing is the best idea for a construction like this because it makes it very solid and it will not come apart. So what I've then done is use my finger to smooth that over. See, you don't need very much. And then we'll lift this back up. Plonk. We'll set that back here. And we'll get the clamp again and we'll re-clamp it. Now the reason I'm doing that is I really do want this to be solid. So, clamp's just down here on the floor. Doing this on camera is awkward. Let's get that clamp there. Get that on there. And get that on there. Might need to make it a bit wider, I think. Okay, so when that is exactly in the right place, we'll tighten the clamps up. Okay, so now, that's now nicely done. And then with the driver, and I have some stupidly, ridiculously long screws. And this is why you drill a hole, a guide hole, because you don't want to split the wood. We will drive these in. Just like that. And I'll put another one in. And there you are. There you have a very strong corner to your frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the other 4 corners and then when that's done I will bring you back and we'll do the next step. And there you have it. I have screwed all 4 corners together and put glue in as well. I'm going to let that overnight now. I'm not going to do any more on this. Basically it is late. I'm having to be very quiet for Rosie and I would hate to wake her. And also it's a bit cold in here. I've not yet fitted my heater in this room. So it's pretty chilly right now. So that'll set overnight. Tomorrow I will do the next step. It has not taken me very long, maybe 15 minutes or so of effort to actually make that frame. So yeah, easily done. It's the morning after and what I'm about to do is start work on putting this hardboard as a base. So I'll be attaching it how you see it there with the soft part on external. That'll mean that it protects the table it's sat on slightly. and it will also make it a little more rigid and a little less prone for warping or getting damaged. So first of all, I'm going to make use of my trusty pencil, and I'm going to draw around the shape so I get exactly the right dimensions. And then I actually have a little bit of reorganising to do, because I don't actually have anywhere at the moment. This workshop is still in progress and is very, very messy. I won't show you the rest of it. So I don't actually have a bench that's large enough available for me to do this cut. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of fettling around, and then I'll get my maybe jigsaw or maybe my circular saw, and I'll cut the shape out. So yeah, I will leave the camera running and I'll do some drawing, and then when I'm ready to do the cut, I will show you me doing that as well. I have finally managed to get time to get back to this. I've pulled across some supports and lined up and measured and done everything to make sure it's 90 degrees. And what I'm about to do is use that big saw at the back to the circular saw to cut out the shape. So I've squared it all off, and I'm very happy that that straight edge is in the right place. And now I'm going to cut it. I won't run the camera because it's going to be very loud, but I will show you what this looks like when it is finished, and then I will attach it to the frame. So there you have it. I've managed to cut that square out. That took a bit longer than I wanted. It was a bit of a juggle, but I got there. So the next process will be to glue and screw this board to the bottom of the frame, which is what I'll do next. And I'll show you what it looks like when it is done. We are now ready to do the polystyrene. I seem to be using polystyrene a lot at the moment, last week and now this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this down with gator glue, and then weight it down with multiple weights, and then leave it overnight so it's completely and utterly set before I start doing anything else. I will run the camera, but the battery is a bit low, so it might cut off, but we'll see how far that gets. Just got in before the battery died. I'll leave that overnight now. Hello and welcome back to my workshop. This build is largely going to take place down here as it is so large, and I don't have the space in room 13, so yeah, I'm just going to have to be cold a bit because there's no heating in here. Anyway, what I've got here is the War in Rohan source book, which is the book that contains the first battle of the Fords of Isen and the second battle of the Fords of Isen, the map for which, the table for which I am building here. Now you can see that the foam has glued in fine. I've left it overnight and I've come back to this in a few minutes I've got during the day. What I'm about to do is make use of my trusty Sharpie to draw on where the river is going to go. Now I think the river is going to go either this way or that, but it's going to be about 80, it's going to start about 18 inches from one edge, do a little bit of a kind of gentle curve, and then finish about central on the other edge. So I'm going to take my nice Sharpie here, and I'm going to draw on where we're going to do the cut. So let's do that now. So there we are, that's where the river is going to go. I based that quite closely off of the map in the books. And what I'll do next, not now because I don't have time quite now, is I'm going to make use of my hot wire foam factory cutter to shave out this area. I know a lot of people do lots of different techniques, but I'm going to do this with the hot wire cutter. So when I get back down here, I will invite you back along and you can see that next step. Hello, it is now the evening and I am about to get stuck in with my hot wire tool to cut out this river. what you can see is I've got a fan set up which can blow the fumes away, and I have my very good vapour mask which I'll be wearing as well while I'm doing this. So what I'm going to do is get myself set up, get that plugged in, get the mask on and get cutting, and then you can watch while I'm doing so. I left the room then for about 2 hours with that fan running the whole time because, yeah, it stank, it really did, particularly with the heat gun. That was a last minute decision, and I'm very pleased I did it because that made a big difference. Now, the reason why I decided to use it is I was originally thinking about covering the whole thing with modelling compound and making the contours like that, but when I read the actual layout description, the board represents the Ford of Isen. There should be a river that is 6 inches wide, yep, flowing down the centre of the board from north to south. There we are. In the middle of the river is the ford, a 6-inch wide area of the centre of the river that can be crossed as normal. The rest of the board is mainly bare fields with the odd bush, hedge or tree dotted around. Now that made me realise that potentially, if I was going to do this, I'd be wasting a lot of modelling compound because it should be quite flat, because it's fields. So what I've done, give me that one, yeah. What I've done is I've selected out some of the shavings that came from when I was cutting and trimming out the board, and I'm going to glue them down with gator glue so that there's a little bit of an undulation, and then I'll put some sculptor mould around only these shavings, and then the rest of it I'll just do with the paint and sand mix, and that will save me a lot of money on Luke's modelling compound. So I'll point the camera down and I'll get that gluing going and then leave that overnight. Good morning. I'm aware you can't see me very well because the sun is shining in very brightly through the windows and creating quite a lot of contrast on this shot, so apologies for that. However, what I'm about to do is make use of Luke's modelling compound, which you can see here, and I'm going to put that to blend in these little hill sections which are glued down very, very nicely overnight, and also to line the edges of where I'm going to be pouring the resin. So I'll get that done. I'm going to try and do that very quickly. I've got a few minutes now before I have to start work, so I'm going to get that done and leave it to dry over the day. So enjoy watching. I'll put some music on. As you saw, I ran out of modelling compound. However, I did have another pack, which is my final one. So I've refilled my pot, and a bit later on in the day, I've got a few minutes, so I'm going to have a bit more go. I probably won't complete it all this session either, but the more I do now, the less I have to do later. So I will pop some music back on and you can watch me modelling compound away. Here we are, and I've reached a little bit of a crossroads in this build. What you can see is that I have put the Luke's sculpting modelling compound thing quite on a fair few places on the build, particularly over these mounds, because they had been cut out using the hot wire tool and therefore had weird kind of scalloped shapes I didn't like. So I've put that on mainly to smooth that out. And I started at the far end over there to put the sculptor mould along down the river, because I was thinking, well, you know, I'll use that to line the river, and then afterwards I'll put the terrain paint on. And as I talk to you right now, I'm not sure whether I'm going to continue that process or whether I'm going to skip it completely, leave this to go off overnight, and then tomorrow put down some terrain paint and sand. I'm going to think about it. Rosie's currently in the bath. I have 5 minutes to myself to have a think, so that's why I've come through to look at it. And I thought I'd just do a quick discussion where my thought process is, so that you can understand what goes into these kinds of builds. You don't always have a clear view of what you're doing, and sometimes you have a clear view, which I did have. I was going to do the sculptor mould all the way down it, and then that changes because of various things, not least I'm running out of it. This is all I have left in the building, and the rest of it is, while it's on a truck on the way to Bulgaria, it's going to be at least another week or so until it's here. So I'm going to have a think and make a decision on that, and I'll be sure to let you know. But don't panic if you're unsure, if you change your mind. The outcome is what matters, not the fact that you change your mind during the build. I'm back a little later on, and a decision has been reached. I've just been outside and picked up some stones, and I'm going to make use of Luke's APS modelling compound on the river. I've decided I'm going to, but I'm going to set the stones in so they're actually in the compound, and then after that I can do the paint the rest of it, but do it right. I'm not going to cut corners on this. I'm not going to run the camera this time because I'm going to be fiddling around quite a lot, and I don't have to worry about the battery, but I will show what it looks like in close-up when I finish later on. So there we are. I've done that. I've finished the whole of the riverbed. I've coated it pretty much entirely. It doesn't matter if there's a few bits I've missed, because I will be coming over with PVA and stones and sand and all sorts of stuff before I pour any resin. But at least there's a coating there that was going to be a good base. And then when I get back to doing the next stage, which will be tomorrow, hopefully, when this is dried, I'll be putting an entire covering over the whole lot with sand and dirt and all sorts of other stones and small gravel and what have you. So then when the pour goes on, hopefully there will be no leaks. Fingers very firmly crossed. So been a successful evening. It's taken quite a little bit of time, probably 40 minutes or an hour even to just do that, but I was being very careful and I'm very pleased with the outcome. So let's just let that go off, and then tomorrow I will do the next step. It's the morning after, and I'm about to get ready for putting some cover over all of the board, which you can see here to my right. But what I need to do is make up the scenic paint. Now, because I'm going to be doing so much, I'm not going to use that little jam jar that I normally use. I'm going to make some fresh up. So what I've got is a couple of empty pots. I'm going to put the paint in this one, and I'm going to make up some large batch of scenic glue as well for the same purpose while I'm at it. What I've got here is two colours of paint, and I'm undecided at the moment what to use. This is my normal brown, which is what the other scenic paint is, and this is some kind of dusty, more like, I believe it says linen. It's a linen colour. I think I'm going to go for the brown because the purpose of this first one is to make sure that there's no white showing through and seal the entire board. So what I'm going to do is get started on this, mixing up quite a lot of this scenic paint, and then as soon as it's mixed up, I will start painting it on and scattering sand. So let's get started. I now have a lot of sand to pour. So I've got a large brush, I've got the scenic paint I just mixed, and I've got my bucket which says Builder's Sand number 1 on it. Now, I'm not going to subject you to a speeded up version of me doing this entire board because frankly that would be boring for everyone involved. However, I thought just in case you haven't watched any of my other videos, I would show you how I go about doing this. So what we'll do is we slop the paint on. We are very liberal in our application of our paint. We don't worry about getting it onto the wood either, because that will be dealt with another time. There we are, it's a good amount. Then we get our sand, and I've got a very useful President cheese pot, and we sprinkle it over. And you don't leave this too long. I may even have done a little too much because you do not want it to dry, otherwise you'll have to go and do this again. And there are some areas which are already looking a little bit dry. But you shove your sand over the whole lot. Yeah. And then you rinse and repeat over the entire board. So I'm going to go on with that, and I'll show what it looks like when it is done. That's all of that done, and while I did almost run out of sand and almost run out of the terrain paint that I mixed up, I have completed it, and I think it looks really nice, and as it dries it'll end up being really good, a really good base underneath the whole of it. So there's quite a lot still left to do on this build, but what I'm about to do now is something that I wasn't sure I was going to do, and then I decided not to because I thought I'd run out of materials, but I'm going to give it a go anyway because I do think it's a good idea. So what you'll see is that there's a gap here. There's the wooden edge of the frame, and then there's the terrain. Now, I made a little bit of a mistake, I think, which is I made the outside dimensions of the frame the 4 foot, not the inside dimensions, which means that technically to make this board the correct size, I'm going to need to scenic right up to the edge. Now, I was umming and ahhing because of my lack of modelling compound. I'm running it very, very low in my stocks, but I think I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to try to go all the way around the edge with modelling compound, and then I'll do the paint and the sand mix on it, and then it will basically be right to the edge, and that'll be good. What I'll probably then do is paint the edge black, but that's for a future task. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to just get stuck in, I won't run the camera, and we'll see how far I get with my stocks. I got so close, but then I ran out. As you can see, I've run out here, and I've got all the way along around to here to do. Fortunately, the awesome man that is Steve, one of my friends who lives here in Bulgaria, has a bag of the modelling compound and is going to send it down via courier and that will arrive to me in a couple of days, and then that means I'll be able to finish this off. Now the next process is, this is not dependent on, so that's actually okay, I can get away with it. The next process is all going to be around the river, so I can wait a couple of days and then finish off the edge, put the scenery on, and then I'll be ready and set for doing all of the flocking. So frustrating, I didn't get it all done, but I'm nearly there, and I'm pleased that I'm finishing it off properly. I should have done this initially, but then it would have delayed the whole build. So the fact that I'm doing this later has kind of psychologically made it okay for me to carry on. So onwards and upwards with this build. I'm now going to leave it. I'm not going to look at this now until later on this evening. I think got to let it dry a bit. Well, I'm back here again, and what I'm going to be working on now is putting down the stones and the gravel in the riverbed. I'm going to do that very simply. I'm just going to scatter it on, and then I'm going to bathe it in PVA, because all of this pretty much will be underneath the resin tomorrow anyway, but I need to get this done so it's got a chance to dry before I do the resin pour tomorrow evening. So I will point the camera as much as I can so that you can see what I'm doing and get stuck in. So that didn't take very long, about 10 minutes tops. What I'm going to do now, and this is a last minute decision, is many moons ago, I bought this stuff. It's just like from a local hardware store, and I've used it in the past as some kind of greenery on trees, and it works quite well for that, and I'd forgotten all about it until just now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop some of it along the bottom of the river, just to give it a little bit of an illusion of depth at each of these ends, and also because I think it will look really nice. Obviously this will go underneath the resin, and so it will look like river weeds, which I think will be quite nice. So I'm going to go along all of the bed where I think this should be. It won't take me very long, and I'm going to put down river weeds, probably only at these ends, to be honest, because I think it's going to be shallower at that end, and I may not want them there, but certainly at each of the edges, each of the ends of the river area, I think that there will probably be some undergrowth and stuff that you'll be able to see through the water, and this will then be held in place by the PVA that's already in, and then by the resin when it is poured. So I will show you what that looks like when I am done. I've finished doing that. I don't know if I've ever done it slightly, but if I have, then I have. I'm quite pleased with it. If you can see, I've got quite a lot at this end, and then at the far end I've got slightly less. So I'll just zoom up to the far end. I'm quite pleased actually with how this riverbed is looking. It's going to be a very subtle effect, and it's going to work really well when the resin goes on it, which will be done tomorrow evening around this time. I'm going to give this 24 hours now to dry fully, and then I'll be back to pour the resin. So yeah, let's shut this all down and go, and actually what I'm about to do is go and start editing the vlog. So yes, onwards and upwards. This is the build that keeps fighting back. So I've just gone to look at my CFS Clearcast, and it has been a while since I've used it, but it's completely gone off in the tin, which is a real pain because I'm going to struggle to get hold of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a first pour of this yacht varnish, which I also bought years ago, but is still good. And I think that will do quite nicely anyway down the middle in the deeper parts, and it will give a little bit of murkiness. And then I'm going to have to dig around and try and find some alternative for the rest of the build. I don't have very much time because a week tomorrow I need to be editing this. So I'm going to pour that in and hope that it works. Let's hope I don't ruin the board. Thank you so much, Steve. You, sir, are a legend. After about 3 or 4 days, it's clear that I made a mistake pouring this this varnish. It hasn't really gone off at all, and it hasn't really done the effect I wanted it to. It's still quite bubbly. You can see I can move it around because it's formed a skin over the top, which isn't really what I wanted it to do, so it's still wet underneath. And thinking about it, that's pretty obvious. That's what varnish is going to do. I should have been applying it in thin coats, letting that dry, another thin coat, and building it up over, well, in that rate, of several weeks. Now, it's not a total loss because it has given an effect, and hopefully it will not be completely, it'll work well enough when I apply the right stuff, because that's what I've decided. This build is not going to be finished in time. It's not going to be finished in time because of a lack of materials. Steve, the legend, sent me the Luke's APS modelling compound, so once I've shot this bit of footage now, I'm going to go on and I'm going to continue around the edge, and I'm going to finish off building up this area here, the layer around this outside, and then that's going to mean that I can then finish scenicking around there, and then I'll be ready for when the correct stuff, the actual resin that I've ordered, which is currently in the UK and will be on a truck hopefully tomorrow coming to me, so it should be here within a week, and then I can pour that and finish off all the terrain and it'll be done. But it does mean that I'll probably be a little late actually delivering this video, which is a shame, but there's a lesson there as well. Sometimes pressuring yourself for a delivery date, rushing yourself on a terrain piece because you think you've got to get it done, makes you make mistakes. And it's better just to take a deep breath and say, okay, I'll be a bit late, it'll take a bit longer, and then get the right stuff, particularly when you're in my situation where you may not have access to the things that you need. So I'm going to leave the river. It will be done properly with some proper resin, and I'm now going to put more of the Luke's terrain compound all around the edge of the board so that I can then finish that bit while I'm waiting for the water. So I won't show you on camera because, well, you've seen that several times, but I will show you when it is done. I'm going to crack on with that now. All of the modelling compound is now applied all around the edges, and I'm going to say again thank you a third time in this video to Steve Payne for sending me the additional kilograms so quickly. What a legend. I mean, that's what this hobby is all about, the people like that just help you out and don't ask for anything in return. I'm blown away by his generosity, and yeah, thank you again so much. So I'm now going to let that go off and dry overnight, and the next task will be to put the terrain over the now extended modelling compound to finish off this top of the board. I am umming and ahhing about this area here. Let me just move the camera very slightly for you and zoom right in. At each end of the river, I have left the border of the actual border of the board, and so the river finishes technically about 1 inch short of where the rest of the terrain finishes. What I'm going to do about that, I don't know. I'm toying with getting my jigsaw out and cutting it down. I'm toying with leaving it and just saying, well, that's just river and painting it green. I don't know. I'm going to have a good think about that, and I will obviously, you'll see what I decide. But that's another thing I'm thinking about at the moment on this build. It's been a build that's fighting back, but it is going to be really, really nice when it's done and really worth it. And I can tell you what, I cannot wait to play the scenario over it and film it and show it to you, which I am definitely planning on doing. So that's that. I'm going to let that dry, and I'll be back to it with the next thing later. now that all of the Luke's APS terrain compound, modelling compound, whatever, is dry, including the stuff that I did yesterday, I'm going to come along with the brown terrain paint and the sand, and I'm going to apply that all over this edge so that it is finished up to the edge. I did briefly consider continuing the level, but I've decided against it for a couple of reasons, one of which is I then need to actually clad around the outside again with wood to make it non-chippable, and I think it's okay. I mean, you can sit a miniature on this. Still haven't decided what I'm doing about that, still thinking about it. So I'm going to leave the camera rolling and put some music on, and you can watch me do this simple process. That's been left to dry overnight, and now I am going to recover as much of the sand as I can. Now, in the previous version, I had a big tray and I was able to lift up the entire board and tip it into the tray because I worked in slices. Can't do that this time. So what I've got is a large soft bristled, very soft bristle brush, and I'm just going to come along and literally brush off the sand into my bucket. Now, you might think this is quite tight and why not just throw it away, but there's a lot of effort goes into actually sifting this sand. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and so this is saving me effort. And I am a lazy person, I don't like doing things twice, so why should I throw this sand away only so to have to sift some more and get this bucket full again? So I'm going to go around the entirety of the edge of this. It doesn't take too long, as you can see, and I'm going to recover as much of this sand as I can. There is a bit that's fallen on the floor, but I was very, very careful as I was pouring it because I knew that I would want to save as much as possible. So I'll get that done, and I'll be back when I'm on the next process on this build. It has been quite a while since I've been back in here because I've been waiting for delivery of the epoxy water, which I'll put a link to below. As I've said, I think before, I can't remember, so long since I've shot any clips, that the water effects that I had gone solid in the box. Obviously, I've been very, very busy at doing other things, and so even though there were other things I could do prior to pouring that water effect, I just haven't got down here. So I'm going to grab 10-15 minutes now, which is about all I've got, and over here you can see a big pile of pots and some PVA, and I'm going to start to put the first ground cover of the flock on. So I will put some music on and you can watch while I do it. Hello and welcome to my workshop. As you can see, the fire is lit. This is because the task I've set myself for this evening is to pour water effects onto the river. And the chemical does say that it needs to have a relatively good ambient temperature, otherwise it's too thick. And so I'm hoping that, having been sat in here for the last couple of hours with that fire going, that it will actually work. I'm going to point the camera down now. We'll see whether it does is successful or not, but it kind of needs to be, because I would very much like to get to pour tonight and one tomorrow morning and one more tomorrow evening, and then hopefully in that time also finish the rest of the board. It's looking great, really nice. The flocks have done a great job, and it'll be good to finish this by the end of this weekend. So without any further nattering, I'm going to point the camera down and you can see how this goes. So the big moment. I've brought some latex gloves. I don't know whether I need them or not, but I would rather be safe than sorry. So I'll pop them on, safety first. And what I've done, as you can see, is I've got 2 cups and I've labelled one A and one B. And I'm going to do this by eye at this stage, as I need to get some more measuring cups, I think. And I'm going to just do an amount in each one and visually work out that it's the same. So let's see how well this pours, if it's too solid. No, it looks okay. So we're going to pour quite a lot. We can do more pours. Can always mix more. And you know, I've just realised that actually I have forgotten something, because I need 3 pots. So I'm going to run and get another pot, because I'm an idiot. I'm back, bit out of breath because I ran. I'm going to write an M. That means it's for mixing. Right, okay, so we have an amount of the B. We're now going to put an amount of the A. About equivalent. So let's just see. It is a bit syrupy. It has been a bit cold in here, like I've said. But it's coming out. Be really careful here. Now hold them up to the light. And a little bit more we need from the part B. So now if we hold them up to the light, I can't really do this with the camera, apologies, you have to take my word for it, that they're equal. So what we'll now do is we're going to get our mix cup and we're going to pour in what we've just measured. Now doing this via weight might be slightly easier, and I do have a good scale, so maybe next time I'll do this by weight, because then I can have one, I can just have the M, and I'll also be far more accurate. So anyway, we're going to scrape out as much of this as we can. Well, it's not whatnot, and it's not cheap, this stuff. And then use the back end of this one. We'll pour this stuff in. And then what it says is to mix it, which I will do with this tongue depressor type thing. And I also have a coffee stirrer for getting into the bits that I might be missing or whatever. Grown bearded man playing with chemicals trying to make water. But hey, you're watching it as well, so you must enjoy it. Right, so we've got all of that out there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to stir it. Stir it well. Let's pour. So I'm going to stop the camera now because it's just going to be more of this and it'll be very boring to watch. But I'm quite pleased with that, that's good stuff. And I will be sure to invite you along to show you what it looks like when it is done. I've done a first pour and I'm quite happy with how that looks. I will just move the camera around a little bit and zoom in so you can see. I got most of the bubbles out and I'm happy with the number there are, as I've said before. I really do want it to be a moving stream, so I'm not worried about that. As you can see, the area which is actually the Ford, obviously, is higher and doesn't have any. And as we come to this end, that was the amount that I did in the first pour. So that was pour number 1, and that was pour number 2. What I'm now going to do is leave that to go off overnight, and it has absolutely no odour. Really no odour, which is brilliant. So that means that I will be able to move it into living quarters for it to dry and be in a warmer place and not be quite such a mission to mix and keep warm and have to heat the room. Nice as it is to be in here with a fire going and it to be warm. So yeah, looks good. It's not cheap, as I've said. I'll put a link in the description below to this CFS water clear epoxy. And yeah, it looks good. It was Luke from Luke's APS that recommended it, and he does know his onions, so normally you can take his recommendations very well. And in this case, it seems he's right again. So I will let that go off, and we'll do another pour tomorrow, and I will show you what it looks like when it's done. I'm back in the living room, and behind the camera, just there, I have the board set up and a couple of sawhorses. And what I'm going to be doing today, it's Sunday and it's the final day of this build, is I'm going to be putting some decorations and finishing off. So I'm going to put some hedges on, I'm going to put some old trees, some broken fences and other bits and pieces like that. I did do an entire pour. I finished up at the end all of the resin that I bought, and it's done about half of the depth that I was aiming for originally, but I'm very happy with how it looks. So I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm not going to do any of the water effects on it yet because I have ordered some more materials, and if and when that comes, then I will pour more water on, and I'll be sure to do an addendum video to this to show that and to show what it looks like with a little more water on it. But for now, it's definitely playable, it's definitely good, and I do want to get this video done and finish and on to the next magazine. So yeah, I will also do some photographs and show you what the board looks like, so you'll be able to see that. I'm not going to do all of this on camera because it's going to be bits and pieces while I'm also interacting with the family, it being a Sunday and a family day, but I will come back at the end of the day and show you what it looks like. It's the next day and I forgot to film last night, which I meant to do, to show you what I got done, but I did get done quite a lot. I did some static grasses, I worked on the old forest and basically just finished the board off. The only thing that's left to do now is to paint the edge of the board, the rim of the board brown, which I'm going to try to get done today, but that's finishing off and isn't actually part of the terrain and scenicking. So I'm going to consider this build done. What I'm going to do now is point the camera down. I've got the sun rising, which is why the light is increasing next to me, and I'm going to show off what it looks like, and then I will do the wrap up and some photographs. So let's go to shaky cam. What we've got here is a pretty awesome looking board. I'm very, very pleased with it. I've done a few different elements. So on this quarter, there's an old field that you can see. So it's got some broken down fences. These are made with matchsticks and coffee stirrers and then stained with a brown and then stained with a light grey. Over here in this quarter, you can see that I have been making use of models to make sure of my spacings. We have an old forest, which is looking particularly good. Just old sticks that I've pinned in place, a little bit of sand there which I've just put in to cover over some paint because there was a bit of a mistake, and some Luke's APS basing material, forest scatter. Over here we have some kind of rough ground, so making use of dead grass and autumn grass to make it look a bit drier and a bit less lush. And in this corner we have some hedges. And then coming down the middle, thanks to Angela for the suggestion to put the static grass on the track. Here is the Ford of Isen, and the track comes towards us, and you can see there's some dead static grass that goes down the middle. And then the river itself is looking really good, and funnily enough, The idea I had, I'll turn that way because I think the reflection will be better. Yeah, the idea I had to put the boat varnish has actually worked out quite well. It's got that kind of yellowy depth to it, which is actually what I was aiming for. So that mistake has turned out to be correct. So there we are. That's what the board looks like. I'm very pleased with it. I can't wait to get a game on it. Say hello to Rosie, who has decided to say hello to you. There she is. I will now go back through to room 13 and wrap this up. There you are then. What an absolutely epic build that was, and a lot of fun for me to do, and hopefully a lot of fun for you to watch along. I do hope this may have inspired you to have a go at making your own advanced terrain board, because it really isn't all that hard. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of planning, and the correct materials. And that's been my biggest challenge in this build, is sourcing the materials, and that's why it's a little late and it's taken me a little longer to do, and also why the river is a little lower than I wanted it to be. As I've said, I have ordered some more materials. I will do an update video on this to show what it looks like when it has water effects and the other bits on it. But for now, that's definitely good enough to play on, and that was the aim of the build. So I will sign that off now. I've added some pictures at the end of this video. Now, it's not really possible for me to put it into my photo booth. As big as my photo booth is, it certainly isn't 4 foot by 4 foot. So apologies if the quality is a little lower than on my other photographs that I'm putting now at the end of my videos, but it's as good as I could get it. Any comments, any suggestions, any why did you do this, any why didn't you do that, please pop them in the comments below. I always love to hear from you, and I will endeavour to reply to every single one of you. If you're not yet subscribing, please do so, and don't forget to ding that bell so that whenever I do a video, YouTube does tell you whenever it decides to that there's one there and you can keep up to date with them. And I will sign off as normal with a thank you for watching Beard Clipper.